Kira was born on a planet called Vorelia, where beauty and perfection were the highest standards. Her people believed that only the genetically pure were worthy of respect, and those with any flaws or mutations were seen as inferior. Kira had always known she was different, but it wasn't until she was a teenager that the full weight of her difference became clear. It started when Kira's skin began to change color. At first, it was just small, faint patches that appeared when she felt nervous or excited, but as she grew older, the color shifts became more unpredictable. Her skin would turn bright purple in one moment, and deep blue the next, sometimes even a strange green. It was as though her emotions controlled her appearance, and it embarrassed her to no end. Her parents, who were respected leaders in their community, didn't know how to handle her mutation. They loved her, of course, but even they couldn't hide the shame they felt whenever others noticed it. They tried to convince Kira that her mutation was just a phase, something that would pass as she matured. But it never did. As she grew older, Kira was slowly pushed out of the activities and circles she once belonged to. The other children began to avoid her, not because they were cruel, but because they were afraid. They were afraid of something they couldn't understand. They didn't want to be associated with the girl whose skin changed like a chameleon's, a girl who didn't fit the perfect image they all strived for. At school, Kira became an invisible presence. She sat alone during lunch, avoided eye contact, and spent most of her time hiding in corners of the library, trying to lose herself in the stories of other worlds. She wished she could escape into those books, away from her reality. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that she didn't belong. Kira's teachers were no better. They would give her grades, but it was clear they didn't think much of her. She was always labeled as the different one, the one who didn't belong. No matter how hard she worked, or how much effort she put into her studies, nothing seemed to make a difference. Her mutation defined her in their eyes, more than her intelligence or kindness ever could. In the evenings, when the sun set and the streets grew quiet, Kira would sneak to her computer. She found comfort in a place where no one cared about her appearance or her mutation, an online community of people from all over the galaxy. They shared their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. Kira was a silent observer at first, reading posts about different people's experiences and the way they overcame their challenges. It was there that she first felt understood. Kira started to share her own thoughts, though she was careful at first. She wrote about how she felt like an outcast, how her people had rejected her because of her mutation. She didn't expect anyone to respond, but when they did, it gave her a sense of hope. Strangers from all over the galaxy told her their own stories of being different, of being outcasts, and how they had found acceptance in the most unexpected places. One evening, Kira received a message from someone named Ethan. His message was simple, just a kind greeting. "I read your post. You're not alone." He went on to explain that he was a human who had traveled far and wide and had met many different species, each with their own differences. He told her that he didn't believe that anyone should be judged for the way they looked or what made them unique. For the first time in a long while, Kira felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Ethan didn't see her mutation as something to be ashamed of. He saw it as a part of who she was, just like everything else. They continued to talk late into the night, sharing their lives, their dreams, and their fears. Ethan spoke of Earth, a place where people from all over the galaxy coexisted. It was a place where diversity wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. As the days passed, Kira found herself looking forward to each new message from Ethan. He was kind, understanding, and completely unlike anyone she had ever met. He didn't judge her for her mutation. He simply accepted her for who she was. And for Kira, that was more than she had ever hoped for. She had spent so long wishing for acceptance from her own people, but now she realized that maybe acceptance could come from someone entirely different. Someone who didn't care about the surface but saw the person underneath. But even as her heart warmed to Ethan's kindness, doubt crept in. Kira couldn't help but wonder if this was all just a fantasy. Could she truly find a place where she belonged? Or would she forever be an outcast, never able to escape the judgment of her people? Still, as she lay in bed that night, staring at the stars through her window, Kira allowed herself to dream. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her yet. Kira sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen in disbelief. The message from Ethan was still open in front of her. His words had stayed with her for days, and now here he was again, sending her a message that made her heart race. "Hey, Kira," the message began. "I hope you're doing well. I was thinking, maybe I could help you. I know you're feeling like an outcast right now, but I think you deserve better. What if you came to Earth? I'd love to show you a place where you don't have to hide who you are." Kira read those words over and over again. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of how to respond. Could she really go to Earth, a planet so far from her home, with people she had never met in person? It felt like an impossible dream. She had spent most of her life feeling like an outsider, and now this human, someone from a completely different world, was offering her a chance to escape everything she knew. Her first reaction was to laugh nervously. Was this some kind of joke? No one would actually invite a stranger to their home planet, and yet Ethan had already shown her more kindness and understanding than anyone from her own world had ever done. He didn't see her mutation as a flaw. He simply saw her as Kira, a person worth knowing. Kira leaned back in her chair, trying to think. She had always dreamed of a place where she could be herself, where she wasn't judged by the way she looked. But was Earth really that place? Could she trust this stranger with her hopes and dreams? After a long pause, Kira typed a reply. "I don't know. It seems too good to be true. I've never left Vorilia, and Earth is so far away. I'm not sure if I could make the journey." Ethan's response was quick. "I understand. It's a big decision, but I think you deserve to experience a place where you can be free. Freed from judgment, and free from hiding. If you decide to come, I promise I'll make sure everything is taken care of. You won't be alone." Kira felt a wave of warmth spread through her. Ethan's sincerity was clear. He truly wanted to help her, even though they had never met face to face. For the first time in a long while, Kira felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she could leave behind her painful past and start anew. The thought of leaving Vorilia filled Kira with both excitement and fear. She had never been outside her home planet, and the idea of traveling to a whole new world was overwhelming. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that staying on Vorilia meant staying in the same lonely, isolated life she had always known. Perhaps this was the chance she had been waiting for. "I'll do it," Kira typed back, her hands trembling. "I'll come to Earth." The moment she hit send, a sense of relief washed over her. She didn't know what to expect, but she was ready for something different, ready to experience the world beyond the narrow borders of her home planet, ready to see if Ethan's words were true, that Earth could be a place where she was accepted, not for how she looked, but for who she was. Over the next few weeks, Ethan helped Kira with everything. He arranged for a special ship to transport her, one that could handle the long journey from Vorilia to Earth. Kira was both excited and terrified as she packed her things, unsure of what the future held. She had never thought it possible to leave her home, but now it was becoming a reality. The day of her departure arrived sooner than she expected. As Kira boarded the ship, her heart pounded in her chest. The familiar sights of Vorilia faded as the ship's engines roared to life, and she stared out of the window at the stars ahead. The vastness of space stretched out before her, and for the first time in her life, Kira felt small and insignificant, but in a way that was strangely freeing. The journey to Earth was long, and there were moments when Kira felt doubt creep in. What if she didn't fit in? What if Earth wasn't the place she had imagined? But every time her thoughts turned to fear, she reminded herself of Ethan's words. "You won't be alone." Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the ship entered Earth's atmosphere. Kira's heart raced as she looked out the window. Below her was a planet unlike any she had ever seen. Blue oceans, green forests, and cities that sparkled like stars in the night. It was everything Ethan had described and more. When the ship landed, Kira stepped out onto the soft soil of Earth for the first time. She felt the cool breeze on her skin, the fresh air filling her lungs. She could hardly believe it. She was here. And though she was still unsure of what the future held, there was a part of her that felt like she was finally home. Ethan was waiting for her at the landing pad, a warm smile on his face. "Welcome to Earth, Kira," he said, extending a hand. "I'm glad you made it." Kira smiled, feeling a mix of relief and excitement. She wasn't sure what her journey would bring, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Kira stepped off the ship, her feet touching Earth's soil for the first time. The planet felt different from Vorilia, and yet there was something comforting about it. The air smelled fresh and clean, unlike the artificial environment she was used to back home. As she looked around, she saw tall trees swaying gently in the breeze, and the sky above was an endless blue. It felt as though Earth was welcoming her, embracing her with open arms. Ethan stood a few feet away, watching her closely. His warm smile made Kira feel at ease. She had been nervous about meeting him in person, unsure of what to expect, but now that they were face to face, she realized how genuine his kindness had been. He was just as kind in person as he had been online, and that filled Kira with a sense of relief. "Welcome to Earth, Kira," Ethan said, his voice filled with warmth. "I'm glad you made it." Kira nodded, still taking in the new surroundings. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," she said quietly. Ethan chuckled. "It's definitely a special place, and you're going to love it here." Kira felt a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in years. Maybe this was the fresh start she needed, a place where her mutation didn't define her, a place where she could simply be herself. After a few moments, Ethan gestured for Kira to follow him. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll be staying. It's not far." As they walked, Kira's mind raced with questions. She had read a lot about Earth during her time on the Galactic Reddit forum, but there was still so much she didn't know. The people seemed so different from her own, yet Ethan had promised her that they would accept her. Could she truly fit in here? Was it really possible to start over, to leave behind the years of being judged for something she couldn't control? As they approached a small building, Ethan turned to her. "This is where you'll be staying for now. It's not much, but it's comfortable, and it's all yours." Kira looked at the modest house in front of her. It was simple but cozy, with a garden in the front and a small porch. It felt like a peaceful place, far removed from the judgmental eyes of Vorilia. For the first time in a long while, Kira felt a sense of calm wash over her. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of gratitude. Ethan smiled. "It's the least I could do. I know it's a big change, but I'm here to help. If you ever need anything, just let me know." Kira nodded. She was grateful for Ethan's kindness, but she also felt the weight of her own uncertainty. She had left everything behind, the only home she had ever known. Her family, her friends, and even her planet. It had been a hard decision, but now that she was here, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. As if sensing her unease, Ethan spoke again. "I know it's a lot to take in, but you're not alone. You have a new chance here. And if you ever feel lost or unsure, I'll be here. We'll figure it out together." Kira smiled, grateful for the support. "I don't know what to say. I've never had anyone care about me like this before." Ethan's expression softened. "You deserve it, Kira. You deserve to be happy and to feel accepted for who you are. I'm glad you're here." The two of them stood there for a moment, taking in the peaceful surroundings. Kira had never felt so free, yet so vulnerable at the same time. She had left everything behind, but in doing so, she had gained the chance for something new, a life where she could be accepted, where she could be herself without fear. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the horizon, Kira sat on the porch steps, her mind filled with thoughts of the future. Ethan had promised her a place where she could belong, But would she truly find it? Was this really the start of something new, or was it just another chapter of uncertainty? Ethan sat beside her, his presence calm and reassuring. I know it's a big change, but I believe in you, Kira. You've already taken the hardest step by coming here. The rest will come with time. Kira looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. Thank you. I never thought I'd find a place where I could belong. And now I'm here, and it feels like a dream. Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. Sometimes dreams come true when you least expect it. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Kira felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. She had found a place where she could be herself, where her mutation didn't define her. And with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. The next few days on Earth were a whirlwind of new experiences for Kira. She had spent most of her life in the shadows, hiding her mutation from those around her. But here, everything felt different. The people she met didn't look at her like she was strange or dangerous. Instead, they treated her with curiosity and kindness, as though she was just another person with a story to tell. Kira spent her time getting to know the land around her. Ethan had shown her around the small town where she was staying, introducing her to the local shops, the parks, and even some of the people he knew. She was amazed at how easy it was to strike up conversations with people here. Back on Vorilia, she had always been an outsider, never quite fitting in, always aware of the judgment that followed her every move. But on Earth, it was different. The people seemed to accept her without hesitation, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to hide. Despite the welcoming atmosphere, Kira couldn't shake off the doubts that lingered in the back of her mind. Was this just a temporary feeling? Would she still be accepted once the novelty of her arrival wore off? She had learned to be cautious in her life, always preparing for the moment when people would turn away from her because of her mutation. One afternoon, as Kira and Ethan sat at a small cafe enjoying some Earth coffee, Kira found herself lost in thought. The warm mug in her hands comforted her, but the thoughts swirling in her mind made her uneasy. She glanced up at Ethan, who was watching her with a thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. Kira hesitated, unsure of how to put her feelings into words. "I don't know if I can fully trust this feeling of acceptance. I've never experienced it before. It feels too good to be true. What if it's just temporary? What if after a while, people start seeing me the way they did back home?" Ethan leaned forward, his eyes full of understanding. "I get it. You've spent so much time feeling like an outsider, always expecting people to reject you. But this is different, Kira. Earth isn't like Vorilia. People here are open-minded. It's not just about accepting the way you look. It's about accepting who you are, who you choose to be." Kira looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the rim of the mug. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But her fear of rejection was something that had been with her for so long that it felt impossible to let go. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "What if I'm not strong enough to really belong here?" Ethan reached across the table and placed his hand on hers. His touch was gentle but firm. "You're already stronger than you think, Kira. The fact that you took the step to come here shows how much courage you have. You're not the person you were when you first arrived. And you don't have to do this alone. I'm with you every step of the way." Kira's heart fluttered at his words. She had never had someone like Ethan in her life before. Someone who believed in her, someone who was willing to stand by her no matter what. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a warmth she hadn't known she could feel. "Thank you, Ethan," Kira said, her voice soft but sincere. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Ethan smiled, his eyes lighting up. "You would have figured it out, Kira. You're more capable than you know. But I'm glad I'm here to help you along the way." As the days passed, Kira began to adjust to her new life. She started working at a local bookstore that Ethan had recommended. And while it was quiet at first, she began to find comfort in the routine. The people who came into the store were kind and friendly, always greeting her with a smile. No one seemed to care about her mutation. They only saw her as Kira, the woman behind the counter who loved to read and share recommendations. One afternoon, as she was sorting through books, a young girl came into the store. She had bright, curious eyes and a contagious smile. As she approached the counter, she hesitated for a moment, eyeing Kira closely. Kira raised an eyebrow, wondering what the girl was thinking. "Are you an alien?" the girl asked innocently, her eyes wide with wonder. Kira froze, unsure of how to respond. She had grown used to people avoiding her mutation, but this little girl didn't seem afraid. She was simply curious. Kira smiled softly, deciding to answer honestly. "Yes, I am, but I'm just like you. I like books, and I love meeting new people." The girl's face lit up. "That's so cool. I've never met an alien before. Do you have special powers?" Kira chuckled, feeling a bit of relief at the girl's innocent enthusiasm. "I don't have any special powers, but I do have something very special about me. Everyone does in their own way." The girl grinned. "That's awesome. I think you're really cool." Kira's heart warmed at the girl's words. For the first time in her life, she realized that perhaps Earth really was the place where she could belong. Maybe, just maybe, she could find her place in a world that saw her as more than just her mutation. As the girl left the store with her new book, Kira watched her go, a smile on her face. It was moments like these that made Kira believe that she had made the right choice. She was starting to see that her fears, though real, didn't have to control her future. Earth was a place full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them. Kira had begun to feel a sense of peace in her new life on Earth, but there were still moments when the old doubts crept back into her mind. Each time she saw a new face, she wondered if they would see her mutation, if they would judge her the way the people on Vorellia had. It was a constant battle to push those fears aside, but with Ethan's support, she was beginning to feel stronger. One afternoon, as Kira sat at the small cafe near the bookstore, she overheard a conversation between two local women. They were talking about the upcoming annual fair, a big event in the town that everyone looked forward to. The fair would have food, games, and music, an exciting opportunity to connect with the community. Kira's heart skipped a beat. The idea of being surrounded by so many people made her anxious. She wasn't sure if she was ready to be that visible, especially in a large crowd. What if someone noticed her mutation? What if they treated her the same way the people on Vorellia had? Ethan, who had been sitting across from her, seemed to sense her discomfort. He reached out and placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Hey, you okay?" Kira looked at him, feeling torn. "I don't know if I'm ready to go to the fair. It's a lot of people. I don't want to stand out, Ethan. I don't want anyone to look at me like I'm different." Ethan gave her a gentle smile, his eyes full of understanding. "I get it. It can be overwhelming, especially when you're still adjusting. But I think the fair could be a good way for you to take the next step. You're not alone, Kira, and I'll be there with you, every step of the way." Kira felt a wave of warmth wash over her. Ethan's words were comforting, but she still wasn't sure if she could face such a big crowd. She had spent so long hiding, avoiding attention, that the thought of being out in the open made her anxious. "I don't know." She hesitated. "What if I'm just too different for people here? What if they can't accept me like you do?" Ethan's expression softened, and he took a deep breath. "Kira, you're not alone in feeling like this. Everyone has something they're afraid of. But the people here don't care about your mutation. They care about who you are, the person you've chosen to be. I believe in you. You can do this." Kira looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. She didn't feel alone when Ethan was around. His kindness and belief in her gave her strength. Still, the idea of stepping into the fair and being around so many people felt overwhelming. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "I don't want to face rejection again. I don't know if I can do it." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. It's okay to be scared, but don't let that fear hold you back from living your life. You're stronger than you think, and no matter what happens, I'll be there with you." Kira took a deep breath, trying to calm the swirling storm of emotions inside her. Maybe it was time to face her fears. Maybe, just maybe, she could finally take the step toward fully embracing the new life she had been given. The day of the fair arrived, and Kira stood in front of the small mirror in her room, staring at her reflection. She had dressed in a simple but comfortable outfit, nothing too fancy or attention-grabbing. Her mutation was still there, but she had learned to accept it more with each passing day. Today, she was going to let herself be seen, not as an outcast, but as Kira, the person she was choosing to become. As Kira stepped outside, she saw Ethan waiting for her by the door, his smile wide and encouraging. "You ready?" he asked, his voice full of warmth. Kira nodded, her heart racing. "Yeah, let's do this." Together, they made their way to the fair, the sounds of music and laughter growing louder as they approached. Kira's nerves were on edge, but she reminded herself of Ethan's words. She wasn't alone. She didn't have to face the world by herself anymore. When they arrived at the fair, Kira felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The place was bustling with people, families, children, and couples enjoying the festivities. Kira kept close to Ethan, who walked beside her with a reassuring presence. They visited different booths, tried some earth food, and watched the children playing games. Kira even found herself laughing at one point when a little boy accidentally threw a balloon at her. She had never thought she could enjoy herself in such a lively crowd, but here, with Ethan by her side, it didn't feel so overwhelming. As they walked through the fair, Kira began to notice something she hadn't expected. People weren't staring at her. No one seemed bothered by her appearance. Instead, they were simply enjoying the fair, just like she was. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she could blend in, as though she didn't have to hide. The day went by faster than Kira could have imagined. By the time the sun began to set, she found herself smiling more than she had in years. She had faced her fear and walked into the crowd, and instead of rejection, she had found acceptance. It wasn't just from Ethan. It was from the people around her, too. As the fair came to an end, Kira turned to Ethan, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you for pushing me to do this. I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan smiled back, his eyes sparkling. "I told you, you've got this. I'm proud of you, Kira." Kira smiled, feeling stronger than ever. For the first time, she truly believed that she could belong. Earth wasn't just a place for her to hide. It was a place where she could be herself, surrounded by people who accepted her for who she was. And with Ethan by her side, she knew there was nothing she couldn't face. As the days went by, Kira's confidence grew. The fair had been a turning point for her. She realized that the world was not as unwelcoming as she had once believed. People didn't judge her for her mutation, and many were kind, curious, and accepting. It felt like a new chapter in her life had begun, one that was full of possibilities. Kira found herself spending more time with Ethan, and their bond deepened with each passing day. They would visit local parks, sit in quiet cafes, or simply walk through the streets, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan's companionship made Kira feel understood in a way she had never experienced before. One afternoon, as they walked through a park surrounded by lush trees and the scent of fresh flowers, Kira couldn't help but smile. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over everything. She glanced at Ethan, who was walking beside her, his usual calm and reassuring presence comforting her. "You know," Kira said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never imagined I could feel like this again. It feels so normal." Ethan turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "Normal?" he asked, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "I thought you didn't like the word normal." Kira chuckled. "I don't. But you know what I mean. I've been so focused on how different I am that I forgot what it feels like to just live." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. I get it. Sometimes, we get so caught up in the things that make us feel different that we forget to just be. But you're allowed to feel normal, Kira. You're allowed to be happy. Kira felt her heart swell at his words. For so long, she had been afraid that her mutation would define her, that it would make her an outcast no matter where she went. But now, she realized that it was only a part of her. It didn't have to control her life. As they sat on a nearby bench, Kira looked around, taking in the beauty of the park. People were walking by, families enjoying their time together, children playing with dogs, and couples laughing. It was a peaceful scene, and for the first time, Kira felt like she belonged. But as the evening drew on, her thoughts turned back to Vorelia. Despite everything she had experienced on Earth, she couldn't shake the memories of her home planet. The rejection, the judgment, the constant feeling of being less than others, it still haunted her. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of sadness, "do you ever wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't been so different?" Ethan looked at her with compassion, his eyes understanding the pain in her voice. He took her hand gently. "I know it's hard, Kira. The past is a heavy thing to carry. But you're here now. And you're not that person anymore. You've grown, you've changed, and you've found a place where you can be who you truly are. That's something not everyone gets." Kira closed her eyes, trying to calm the swirl of emotions inside her. She thought of her family, of the life she had left behind on Vorelia. She thought of the other outcasts on her planet, the ones who hadn't been given the chance to escape. She felt a deep ache for them, but she also knew that she couldn't change her past. "I just wish it hadn't been so hard," she said quietly. "I wish I didn't have to leave everything behind." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I know, but maybe the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful places, and maybe, just maybe, Earth is where you were always meant to be." Kira turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Do you really believe that?" Ethan smiled softly, his gaze steady. "I do. You've found people who accept you. You've found a place where you can build a new life, Kira. It's not the same as what you had before, but it doesn't have to be. It's yours." For the first time, Kira felt a sense of peace settle in her chest. The weight of her past, while still present, no longer felt so heavy. She could breathe again, and she could finally look toward the future without the constant fear of being rejected. The next few weeks passed quickly as Kira continued to build her new life. She found a small job at a local art gallery, helping with exhibits and guiding visitors. She enjoyed the work, and it gave her a sense of purpose. She even began making new friends, people who didn't see her as an outsider, but as someone worthy of their time and respect. Ethan remained by her side, always encouraging her to push past her fears and embrace the life she had now. And slowly but surely, Kira started to believe that she could. She had found a place where she was valued, where she didn't have to hide her true self. One evening, after a long day at the gallery, Kira and Ethan sat together in the park once more. The night was cool, and the stars were bright above them. Kira felt a quiet happiness she hadn't known in years. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Ethan smiled and pulled her close, his warmth comforting her. "You've always had it in you, Kira. You just needed someone to help you see it." As they sat together under the stars, Kira realized that she had finally found her place. It was not perfect, but it was hers, and she was no longer alone. With Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next, because for the first time in a long while, she believed that anything was possible. As weeks turned into months, Kira's life on Earth became more and more fulfilling. The gallery where she worked was bustling with energy, and she had become an integral part of the team. Every day, she was surrounded by art, people, and the joy of creating something beautiful. It wasn't always easy. There were challenges, moments of doubt, and days when she still felt the sting of her past. But Kira had learned that even the toughest days were worth facing, especially when she had people who believed in her. Ethan remained her constant, and their connection grew stronger with each passing day. His support had helped Kira through some of her darkest moments, and his unwavering belief in her had slowly begun to heal the wounds left by years of rejection. They had shared many quiet evenings, talking about their dreams, their fears, and the future they both hoped for. One warm afternoon, Kira found herself standing in the gallery, setting up for a new exhibit. The space was filled with vibrant colors and the scent of fresh paint. It was the kind of place that made her feel alive, where she could forget about the past and focus on the present. As she adjusted a painting, she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she was greeted by Ethan, holding a small bouquet of flowers in his hand. His smile was warm, and his eyes sparkled with something unspoken. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice full of affection. "I thought you could use a little surprise." Kira raised an eyebrow, a playful grin crossing her face. "A surprise? What kind of surprise?" Ethan chuckled, his gaze softening. "You'll see." He handed her the bouquet, and Kira took it in her hands, feeling the softness of the petals. "Thank you," she said, touched by the simple gesture. "But what's the occasion?" Ethan looked at her, his expression serious now. "The occasion is today. It's a reminder of how far you've come, how much you've grown." Kira blinked, surprised by the depth of his words. I don't know if I've grown that much." Ethan took a step closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Kira, you've changed in ways I don't think you even realize. You've faced your fears, you've let go of the past, and you've allowed yourself to be happy. That's something not everyone can do." Kira felt her heart swell with emotion. She hadn't truly thought about her progress until now. It had been gradual, like the turning of seasons. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more open to the world around her. She had found a place where she felt safe, where she could finally be herself. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan smiled, reaching out to gently squeeze her hand. "You didn't need me to do it. You've always had the strength inside you. I just helped you see it." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, their fingers entwined. The gallery around them buzzed with activity, but in that moment, it was just the two of them, sharing a quiet connection that felt stronger than anything Kira had ever known. As the days went on, Kira's life continued to flourish. She found herself not only excelling at work, but also building deeper connections with people around her. She began to mentor new artists, sharing her knowledge and passion for creativity. She found joy in helping others express themselves through art, just as she had found a way to express herself. One evening, after a particularly busy day at the gallery, Kira and Ethan found themselves walking through the streets of the city, the lights twinkling around them. The air was cool, and there was a gentle breeze that made the night feel even more magical. As they walked, Kira glanced up at Ethan, her heart filled with contentment. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice full of sincerity, "I never imagined this. Never imagined that I would find a place where I truly belong, a place where I could feel happy again." Ethan stopped and turned to her, his face softening as he looked into her eyes. "You belong here, Kira. You've earned it. And I'm so proud of you." Kira's breath caught in her throat, her chest tightening with emotion. She had spent so many years feeling like an outsider, like she didn't fit in anywhere. But now, with Ethan by her side and a new life unfolding in front of her, she finally understood what it meant to truly belong. "I love you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan's eyes softened, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace. "I love you too, Kira, and I always will." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Kira felt a deep sense of peace. The future no longer seemed uncertain or filled with fear. She knew that no matter what came next, she would face it with courage, with the love of those who accepted her, and with the strength she had found within herself. For the first time in her life, Kira believed that the best was yet to come. She had found her place in this world, not because she was perfect, but because she had learned to accept herself for who she truly was. And with Ethan by her side, she knew that together they could face anything.